the best accounts, it's honestly like a caveman approach. They're just writing a lot of emails. They're just consistent. They're doing the same thing. They're really not doing anything complex. They just kind of know their customers and their business really well.
Welcome back to Horizons Podcast, where I convince marketing leaders to spill their secrets for the rest of us. I'm your host, Nate Desmond, and today I'm sitting down with Jesse Hanley. Jesse is a marketer turned founder who went from running digital marketing at Gold's Gym Australia to building Bento, where he's proving that email marketing platforms don't need venture funding or aggressive growth to deliver enterprise-grade capabilities. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Hello, Nate. Good to be on.
The first thing I'd love to ask you is what led you to start learning to code while running a marketing agency?
I don't know. I think it was just general curiosity. And also when I was working with clients, I was kind of like, I don't know, like a script kiddie. So a client would have a problem and I would just try and solve the problem. And a lot of the time that was like with code, whether that was trying to, I don't know, like do a custom pop-up or I don't know, whatever it was, trying to do marketing attribution stuff. Anything that required a little bit of custom work, I would just do myself instead of try and get for someone to do it. And I think that was kind of from my background of working in Golds and a lot of those other e-commerce companies that I worked with prior. It was like we didn't really have the resources or budget. So anytime I had to do something in Magento or WooCommerce, it was like I had to do it and I had to figure it out. And so, yeah, I know you pull on that thread long enough and then you're like, all right, well, what's coding look like when you do it from scratch? And then you kind of continue to pull on those threads. And then, you know, a few years later, you're like, all right, well, I guess I'm like a developer now. It's, yeah, when you pull on threads long enough and you're patient with it, I think, like, especially when you're running the agency, I think agencies can be all consuming. You know, a lot of agency owners, I think, put a lot of pressure on themselves to like have another product on the side and get something up and running or whatever. But I didn't really put that pressure on myself. I just wanted to like kind of code for fun. And so kind of kept tinkering and you just keep learning over time, which is, yeah, that's kind of like, that was my approach, at least for learning to code.
And you did this pre-AI. Sorry,
Yeah.
I sneeze. You did this pre-AI. What was it like learning to code when you did not have AI to coach you along the way?
It was fine. Like, I don't know. It's just like any other skill, right? So I did courses, and I think something that was like really pivotal, at least for my own learning, was early on in Bento's journey, I actually hired a guy called Andrew Culver, who was a senior developer. He's now the CTO at ClickFunnels, which is a massive, I guess you'd say it's like an e-com company. And I basically hired Andrew to code for me as in kind of like a little bit of like a mentoring relationship. So he would code on what I wanted to build, which at the time was like everything. I was such like a deluded marketer. I just wanted to kind of like build the ultimate all-in-one platform. And I got Andrew to basically build it with me and kind of for me as well. And then I would see how he was building and then I would take over some parts. So he would build something and then I would take over some of that. I would change the color. I would change the buttons. I would move things around. And then more and more, I would do some more functionality and I would just take over the code base. And that was kind of really pivotal to my learning and it kind of accelerated it quite a lot, especially seeing how like a senior marketer kind of did it. Because I've never worked in tech companies properly. I've always worked in bootstrap self-funded companies. And I was always like the self-taught marketer / dev that was kind of doing it all. And so having a senior developer kind of mentor me was like pretty pivotal in teaching myself how to code. And then eventually I was doing all the code and I was a lot more empowered. And there was a point where Andrew's like, you know, I was hitting him up for advice and he's like, bro, you know how to be like, you're further ahead on a lot of this stuff than I can help you out on. Like you can just do it. So yeah, it's that was really, really pivotal, but it was expensive, right? Because I was running the agency and hiring a senior developer came out of the cash flows from the agency. But I don't know, at the time I didn't really care. I just wanted to learn and wanted to tinker, and it ended up being like extremely high ROI. It ended up being worth it, but at the time, I think for the first maybe even like 3 years of Bento, it was like definitely a hole of cash that I was just pouring in, but it was fun for me. It's just like an expensive university course kind of.
I love that approach. I think it's interesting how when you're learning a new skill, getting hands-on experience is great. Getting teaching from someone is great. And you sort of combine those two into one by having someone do the thing you wanted to do and learning as you went.
Yeah, and it could have not worked out, right? Like I could have quit at year 3 or been like, oh, this project sucks, I'm going to start something new. And if I did that, then I probably would have been in the hole quite a considerable amount of money, right? It just so happens that the few years after, actually after I sold the agency and exited and then went full time on Bento, that kind of gave that business and the ability to grow. And then it became profitable. And that kind of bet paid off. But it could have also not paid off. So I don't know if that's actually good advice to do. I think good advice is to like seek mentorship, especially if you want to get into like a new field and find someone. Sometimes you got to pay for it, and sometimes you pay for it or pay for a few different things. But I do think finding someone to guide you who is much further along is very helpful. And even in the AI era, right? Like you've got Cursor, you've got all that. I use, sometimes I'm sleep deprived because I got like a toddler and stuff, and so I'll open up Cursor and I can, get ahead a lot faster. But backing that and supporting that is all that kind of those core skill sets that I learned from Andrew. And that allows me to kind of utilize AI and all that a lot faster. But you still need that kind of core backing and that kind of foundational stuff. Yeah, which AI doesn't necessarily teach, it just helps with.
That's fair. That's fair. You mentioned in the early days of Bento that some of your clients were maybe, I think you said, humoring you. How did you grow your first few clients at Bento?
They were from the marketing agency. Like initially, like the problem that I was trying to solve. So to be clear, Bento now, we basically just focus on email marketing. So we do transactional email, marketing email like MailChimp, and kind of marketing automation like you'd see in all those marketing automation tools, right? And so we're just focused on email. But in the beginning, it was like, it was kind of like an analytics product. I kind of wanted to help my customers with marketing attribution, a little bit of personalization, right? Someone comes from an ad, they see a headline that's a little bit different. And a lot of that code actually is obviously still there and still used. And that is why a lot of people really like Bento, because there's so much data in the product and there's so much visibility that they get. But yeah, in the beginning, it was just like an attribution tool. And so I would kind of sell that to my existing customers to kind of like help them. And because the tool also allowed you to like change things on the website and all that, a little bit of personalization, I would also help my existing customers with the personalization stuff and tinkering. I ended up realizing a lot of that stuff wasn't useful, which is why I kind of kept pulling on threads to try and find a product that was truly useful to people. But yeah, in the beginning, I was just selling to existing customers and they honestly humored me. It was just like, it was a very small subscription compared to the agency payments and retainers. And so they were happy to be like, oh, whatever, Jesse, just like throw the $50 on and install on our site. And I'm very grateful that they let me do that.
And it's interesting what you said about some of these things just not being that important. How did you discover what mattered and what didn't matter?
Because I think I was so I cared a lot about my customers and I cared about driving them results. And some customers were doing paid acquisition and stuff for, right? And so I knew the numbers and I knew that, changing an H1 on a homepage didn't necessarily impact, right? Like I think SaaS owners, they're so like detached from the results of their customers, or they're just not really kind of talking to them, or they're not truly invested in kind of like the results. And so, yeah, you don't really know if your clients are getting utility out of it. Whereas I think with me early on, I was like, all right, changing H1's not really helping. This pop-up may not necessarily be helping, or this is driving like really low quality traffic, or okay, like I added all these things on the site, but really it's the ad that is having the largest impact, not necessarily what's on the landing page that they clicked on after that. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff, right? That I think when you're in the weeds, and I was intimately involved in almost everything for a client, I was able to work out if my software was doing anything at all.
And that's something that's unique still today about how you operate Bento. So I just switched over to Bento a couple of weeks ago for those who are listening. And it's awesome. But something that's unique about your product is whereas something like MailChimp or maybe the alternatives are just software and you use the software and that's what you have. With Bento, you have a very active Discord where you're talking to customers throughout the day. How do you manage to balance both the being really deep with customers and also having time to build the product?
I think it's like a vibe thing. I think like for me, it's like I woke up this morning, I answered a couple of Discord messages or whatever, and then I went to the gym, and then I'll come back, I'm going to chat to someone else, and then I'll just start kind of working during the day. And also I'm in the Japan time zone, right? So a lot of Americans and Europeans are sleeping during when I'm doing the bulk of my work. So I have a little bit of like a time zone advantage in that regard. Europeans get up at like 4 p.m. my time, right? So if I'm doing most of my focus coding from like 11 to 4, generally don't really have anything else in me after that, then I can just chat with customers and do kind of support tickets. And then again, the mornings the Americans are on, so then I can help them out. So the time zone I think really, really helps. I actually did a trip to Canada and I found it was kind of annoying because people were messaging me throughout the day and I didn't really like that. So yeah, I think the time zone definitely helps. But also I think the way that, like, for people that don't know, Discord is just like Slack, right? It's just a community-based thing. It's a lot easier for people to join. And so I find that it's very casual as well. So if we didn't have Discord, I'd probably be getting a lot more support tickets and email. And I find email tickets take a really long time to reply to. You know, an email ticket, you got to go, you know, dear sir, dear madam, blah, 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 blah. It's just like, you got to kind of be, a little bit more corporate-y in your replies. Similarly, in Japanese, you've got like, keigo, like the more professional language here, which when you go to a hotel, they only kind of speak in that. It's a lot more professional. And then you got casual Japanese as well, or just like normal Japanese. And I find email versus Discord is very, very similar. So I like the Discord. I can write very quickly. I can write very casually, and I'm not really like overthinking my responses. I can just get through stuff a lot faster.
Love that. And you also have, if I'm not wrong, a person based in the US who does solve some of those customer things on US
EU.
hours.
Yeah,
EU.
Serbia. Yeah, Anya,
How
she's
did
great.
you manage to hire a person who could represent your way of working? What was your hiring process like?
Yeah, no, there's not so much a hiring process. I have some like hiring philosophy. So I really like hiring in Eastern Europe. So my previous agency, almost all the employees were either in Macedonia or Serbia. And Anya, I found through Bento customer, he had someone who was based in Serbia who, like, she just rocked, and she basically had a friend that was available. And I said, yeah, like I'm looking for some additional help. And then I just brought her on, and she kind of helps with a lot of the back end ops, a little bit of support, and yeah, and like email and stuff like that. And yeah, the European time zone works really well. There's a lot of crossover. She's basically heading to sleep when I'm waking up. So there's almost perfect handover in that regard. And I find like Eastern European work ethic to be extremely good. I find people just work really hard. That the salaries are affordable, especially when you're a bootstrapped company. So you can pay people a fair market rate. And in return, you just get great work ethic back. And I think that's great. Where I've hired people in the States for quite a lot of money, and I don't know, they just have issues sometimes. And same with Australians as well. Just, you know, obviously there are great American workers and there are great Australian workers and great Canadian workers, but I just find that potentially they're not as great as some of their counterparts over in Eastern Europe. So yeah, that's my philosophy. So I prefer hiring a little bit more global and just trying to find great talent at a reasonable price, and that allows me to kind of keep the business healthy and profitable, and not really worry so much about growing at a certain speed to be able to afford these hires, right? Which works for me.
And I'm curious in this theme of remote teams. So you have this person who's basically working the opposite hours of you. So there's very little time for even time zone overlap, let alone being in the same office. How do you manage to make remote work so well while maintaining the voice of your company?
I think you kind of know during the hiring process, you kind of get a vibe, I think, off certain people. So there's a little bit of just trying to, yeah, I don't know, like personality matches. So for me, I'm trying to look for someone that's kind, that's empathetic. Like Anya does a lot of kind of community and work in the government type stuff and work at the universities. And there's a lot of like kind of stuff there where I was like, she's really cool. And she's doing a lot of stuff where obviously she cares about her community. She cares about her university. And like these are values that, okay, maybe that will translate over. And then during the trial period, I'm kind of looking at work ethic more so than anything else. So I'm making sure that people show up, they're consistent doing their daily check-ins. We do daily check-ins, just say, you know, what have you done? What are you going to do? Like very, very simple. I don't actually want, you know, too much information. I just want a check-in. And at the agency, we did that as well. he basically did a daily stand-up using Basecamp, so there'd be like a daily check-in, what do you do today? What are you doing tomorrow? Very simple. And yeah, and if people are consistent, they got a good work ethic, then from there, a lot of stuff's like pretty trainable. And people also, because Discord's very public, people can also see how I operate, and they've got all that history and legacy, right? That they can then read over and see how I'm replying and reference posts that I've done and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of kind of work in public kind of stuff that I think allows people to then mimic me a little bit, which is nice. So you got to lead by example in that regard. So Anya will see how I'm replying and my tone and all that kind of stuff, and then she likely mimics a lot of that too.
And now a word from our sponsor. It's me. I'm actually not taking any sponsors in season 1, but I just wanted to say thank you for listening. It's been such a joy recording these episodes, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I have. If you would like to support the podcast, the single most impactful thing you can do is leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening. This will help new people discover the podcast. And if you have someone in your life who's passionate about marketing, send this their way. They'll probably love diving into these insider tactics and stories. With that, back to the conversation. Fantastic. Pivoting into email. So Bento is a fantastic email marketing program. You've called email marketing, quote, not that hard. What do you mean by that?
I think like it's not as kind of mysterious. Like once you kind of get into the guts of things, it's not as mysterious as people make it out to be. Like deliverability and all that. There's generally pretty clear reasons. Emails aren't landing in inboxes. There could be silly reasons, but they're reasons nonetheless, and it can all be kind of figured out. It's not so much of a black box as I think a lot of people make it out to be. The black box component actually tends to be that your email provider is not willing to work with you on a lot of this stuff, or not willing to actually give you the logs, or willing to tell you, why an email didn't land in the inbox. So, for example, we got a support ticket and someone was like, hey, such and such isn't getting password resets. Yeah. And if you're using like another transactional provider, you may not be able to figure that out, or it may be like a little bit confusing, or emails that kind of continue to get retried and you don't really know like the rationale behind it. And so then I dig in and then I work out, all right, like it turns out that this particular user, their license for their email support tool was busted. And so it had a very like kind of custom message that I'd actually like seen before. And my customer had the phone number of that person, was able to call them. That customer's user was able to like renew that license. They started getting emails again, and the password reset got delivered, right? So there's like, there's a lot of this stuff where it's like, oh, I've seen a lot of these email logs before. I know how to figure a lot of this stuff out. Or another example is Aaron Francis, who teaches courses online for Postgres and Laravel and all that kind of stuff. He did a launch on a brand new domain, and he started getting some Gmail deferral notices, which is basically like, hey, you're sending too quick and all that. But the Gmail deferral notices are a little bit vague, if that makes sense. And I've seen a billion times before, and I know what triggers them. And so I was able to clearly guide Aaron and say, hey, like, let's switch to an age domain that you'd used before that had some history. Let's send out these emails very, very slowly. There's a process we can follow. He followed the process, and now his emails started getting delivered properly, and he had a great launch. There's a lot of this kind of stuff where, yeah, like if you've got the support of your ESP, then email isn't necessarily that hard, and you can kind of like figure a lot of this stuff out. Yeah, I don't know. It's not. There's never really an instance where like you can't get in an inbox at all unless you've royally kind of screwed up somehow. And in the cases where you've royally screwed up, you can still often figure that out if you're a good business and you've got good intent. I think that's probably actually more to the core of it. So email is not hard if you have a good business and good intent.
And I think also Jesse in your corner. I'm not sure that this has left me feeling like email is not hard so much as long as Jesse is with me, email is not hard.
Yeah, I think so. But like, there's some things that I think, like, for example, with let's say like I think recently, since last year, a lot of people have been, especially people with like quite large lists, have been having a lot of difficulty, either getting inboxed, or they just find themselves in like spam a lot more and stuff. And those are the people that are saying emails getting like a lot harder. When we've kind of dug in, especially people that have like brought lists over from other tools and stuff, a lot of the issues have tended to be just like kind of spam signups a lot of the time. Just like they've got insecure forms. that aren't really like hardened. So bots are just submitting a lot of emails every day to them, just trying to fill those email inboxes up with kind of spam and newsletters and all that kind of stuff. And so once you do a little bit of cleanup and all that kind of stuff, you kind of find your way back in. Yeah. I don't know. I think I just feel like it's not hard if you've got good guidance and some good support and you just kind of follow basic best practices.
And that's
I don't know,
actually a
maybe it is hard.
really
I don't know.
interesting rabbit trail to go down for a minute. This signing up of spam emails. What is the reasoning behind why these bots would try to sign up a bunch of spam emails?
There's lots of different reasons. Yeah, there's many different reasons. If we're going to like extreme or kind of like heavy abuse, there could be instances where people are trying to, like, they've got a list of emails. Maybe they got it from like a hacked list or some crypto thing got hacked, and they've got 100,000 emails, and then they'll just write a script that crawls the web, tries to find forms. And one type of abuse is they'll like inject an offer in the first name field in the emails, and the welcome email goes out and says, hey, lollipop, get your free crypto, http://billy.com, all that kind of stuff, right? Which we protect from. So basically they're trying to inject spam in the first name so that you deliver it. And everyone is susceptible to that. I even got hit with this once where a Chinese spammer signed up to Bento, went to the invites, spammed 100,000 invites with like some Chinese spam to Chinese email inbox addresses. And then I was like, okay, that sucks. And my email started going into, like my Bento email started going into spam. And so I patched that up. And then I added a new feature that detects a lot of that for me and my users. And then this is an example where you're like, oh, am I completely screwed? And I wasn't, like maybe for a few weeks or whatever, but it recovered and it was fine. So that's one type of abuse, people abusing sign-up forms or invites to send free spam. Some will even inject HTML in there and put a full HTML email on top of yours because a lot of that stuff will just render out, right? So you got to be very, very careful. Another type of abuse is like they're trying to get into email accounts at scale. So they're trying to like physically log in, like they got passwords. Like Web Archive got hacked recently, and so a lot of those passwords weren't stored securely, from my understanding, and so at scale accounts are trying to get hacked into. And so what spammers will do is they'll fill them up with newsletters so that people won't get the password reset. What is it? Like the password reset emails. So that's a big one. Yeah, there's lots of different reasons spam signups could go on,
Yeah.
But a lot of it's automated. It's just like servers running amok on the web. So whether or not like they're doing anything like totally malicious, sometimes it's just yeah, you're part of a very small, you're part of a very large network of sites that are also getting hit, and then that user's just getting bombed. So
it's quite interesting, especially when you think
your
about
newsletter. Yeah, and like your newsletter list could comprise of 25% of that, right? So then as a result, you send your newsletter out and like the results start kind of declining, and it's just like this aggregation of bot signups that aren't necessarily real. And then Gmail sees, hey, like no one's engaging with your emails, or hey, like you're sending to a lot of people for the first time and they're not getting good feedback, or you're getting some spam reports, whatever. And then that's when you run into issues. And so then your goal is to try and like either clean a lot of that stuff out or add some protection to your form so bots aren't signing up, and you can kind of confirm people are legitimate humans, which, yeah, you'd be surprised. Like we'll get some people from competitors and it'll be like 30% of their list I'll deem as complete trash. And if you kind of graph it, sometimes you'll see instances where like it'd be like an e-commerce company or a SaaS company, and they'll have normal daily signups, and then there'll be like a noticeable increase at some point in time, or it'll be like peak and then a drop, and then like they never clean that up, and either in that peak or that slight little increase, like that slight increase could be like they got added to some script kiddies script thing online, and everyone's now downloading that to spam this guy's form, and as a result he's getting extra 10 bot signups a day, right? And that just aggregates over time. And it's very easy for a marketer not to take action and then be like, why are we constantly going to spam? It's like, all right, well, the total percent of your list is actually just trash. So you should probably do a little bit of cleanup or, lock everything down. Does that kind of make sense?
It
How that
does.
kind of happens?
What makes a truly great marketing email in your experience?
So I think a good marketing email, one part, you need to use your own tool. So I think like a lot of marketers don't even use their own products. I use Bento every single day. I send all my emails through Bento. I've got my automations run up using Bento. Like I just started setting up like done-in payment failure emails on Bento using Bento. Like I'm dog fooding my own tool, and I've gone through onboarding a billion times. Like I know what's required. So for a great SaaS email, I think a lot of it is knowing your customers, knowing what they're dealing with during sign up, knowing what their kind of job to be done is, and making sure those emails are either timely and useful. Whether that is like when someone signs up, we send like an email every single day, just doing one thing in that email. You would have got these. It's like, all right, like an import one, the one's on an import, one's on sending a broadcast, one's on doing an automation. And there's like kind of branding style messaging there as well, but there's usually just like one outcome in that email, which is like, hey, like let's do an import today, or let's do a broadcast today. Did you know you can reply to this email and the founder is going to reply back to you, right? There's that kind of stuff. And so I just try and keep, especially for product emails, very, very simple, one thing only. And especially when someone signs up, you want them to be quite frequent, because you've got their attention for a really limited amount of time. And so you really want to almost be pretty high volume in the first 7 days or whatever. Obviously, once they've consented and they can expect that. And that's the other thing with email. You want to make sure that people both want and expect the email. And if they want and expect the email is generally going to be, it's going to hit well, right? If they don't expect the email, which potentially I would say that, you know, for you, it's like someone 8 years ago, would they expect the email now if they haven't really got it for 5 years? Maybe not. So that may not be a user that you want to continue kind of bringing on. For someone that's just signed up to a SaaS, they're hot, they're ready to go. They probably expect an email telling them how to do an import in Bento, and they're probably expecting an email on how to do their DNS records. Like these are things they expect, and so they probably want to receive them, and they'll engage with them and receive them well. So that's how I think about it, at least from the SaaS kind of product stuff. For ecom, kind of similar philosophy. The big thing with ecom is just like make sure that your list is kind of tight and secure, and so you're getting good qualified signups that are actually, you know, real humans. And then from there, talk to your customers, interview them, understand like what their buying cycle is like. Is it monthly? Is it weekly? Is it, you know, there's some e-commerce companies that do like daily. Some people buy like daily or have daily. It's some of them are insane. But with those, I'd work out like what their buying cycle is and almost have a marketing campaign that is as frequent as your best customers are buying, right? Just so you're always kind of top of mind. Make sure you're at least getting like a weekly or a monthly email out that is expected and wanted by users. I think it's very easy for e-commerce companies to send emails that aren't wanted really, and it's just for the sake of it. And so making sure that both wanted and expected is your North Star tend to not really go wrong. Does that kind of rule make sense?
It does. And I'm curious to go deeper on that second piece. So let's say I'm an e-commerce company. I sell leather belts, and my average customer buys one a year. They're not going to be buying a lot of them. Should I just not do email, or should I do email once a month, a couple times a year?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So it's like, well, what is potentially effective, right? So what I would probably do for, let's say, like the leather belt company is I would make sure that I'd have like opt-ins on the website. And those opt-ins, I would probably be very high volume send in after someone opted in to get the purchase. And so my initial focus would be on that, like a really, really strong welcome series, talking about the story, why your leather belts are different, you know, all that kind of stuff, the different types of belts, what the belts go well with, all that. You know, there's still a job to be done. I got to get the right belt for my suit or my right belt for my work or whatever. And so there's buying considerations there, and there's objections that need to be overcome. And that's a perfect fit for welcome series. For rebuys as well, like you said, like maybe some people buy annually, then maybe having a campaign that's structured where, those reminders come every quarter about, whatever you want those offers to be. You could have like loyalty programs where people get discounts if they've already kind of purchased and stuff before, and those emails go out after 6 months or after 12 months. And then for the newsletter stuff, I would probably do like, if you're getting new products or new product lines, you can obviously do emails about them. If there's any seasonal sales or seasonal campaigns, I would do them. Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas, Mother's Day, Easter, like whatever you want. I would also focus on that. See, there's plenty of reasons to like a sale or a discount or a campaign, or all that is very good reason to email a customer. Now, emailing a customer because some celebrity wore your belt, I don't know, is maybe not wanted or really expected from the user, and so potentially is better for social media maybe, and isn't necessarily the right medium for email. But then on that note, part of the power of email is the power of like reminding people that you exist. And so getting that email out and being in the inbox has a benefit, because people will see the brand and go, hey, I need a belt right now. And they'll then go buy a belt. Like that's how a lot of purchasing decisions happen. It's not the contents of the email. It's not how many emojis are in your subject. It's the fact that someone was in the space to buy and that they were reminded you exist in the first place. So many times, like there's a brand that I buy, Tailored Athlete, and I'll get an email and go, oh yeah, my jeans are ripped. I need to go buy a new pair of jeans. I don't care what's in the email. It's just because I saw a new email from Tailored Athlete, and I don't care. I don't care they have new shirts. I don't buy the shirts. I don't care. But that it served as a reminder, and that there is some power in that. But in the same regard, retargeting ads are also very similar to that. So yeah, this is kind of like how I think about email, especially for the newsletter stuff. I think a lot of the power of newsletters is the power of reminder that you exist in the first place, because it's very, very noisy out there and people forget about your brand. But yeah, it can be challenging to make those emails good every month. I fully acknowledge that. So whether or not you have the capacity to do that is kind of up to you and your brand.
On that note, let's say I'm a marketer driving head of marketing at a small company. Should I be investing first in social, in email, in paid retargeting, in something else? What would be your perspective?
I think you have to acknowledge how your business actually grows. I think that's a big component is acknowledging how your business actually grows. Like for Bento, we could grow by driving a lot of leads to like some opt-in or free giveaway and all that. But frankly, like that's not really how this business grows, or how I necessarily want it to grow, or the type of customers that I want to attract. What works actually pretty well for me is sponsorships, doing podcasts like this, right? Like, but I'm not even deliberate about it. You reached out to me. I didn't ask to be on, right? So like that, I'm happy to do this stuff. And as a result, good brands watch you, or they watch other podcasts I've been on, or we sponsor like a YouTube channel or something that I know has really high quality developer audiences, or I play on Twitter, and then there's like a word of mouth aspect to it. And then when people go, hey, I need an email provider, whether it's transactional or marketing, and they think of us, which is probably what you did. Like you probably saw a tweet of mine or something like that, and you went, hey, I'm not interested in like my current provider. I'm just going to give Bento a try. You tried. You then started getting all of our welcome emails. You then joined our Discord. You're now kind of amongst it, right? So like we've kind of got, so email played a component in there, but then all my other marketing efforts gave you consideration to buy, which so kind of, it was a little bit more of a supporting thing. I've also run like, Twitter retargeting ads and stuff like that in the past. And I find them to be beneficial, though I turned them off recently just to see if like it did have an impact on people being reminded that we exist. And actually, I do think it has impacted sign up. So I'm probably actually going to turn them on this week or something again. But yeah, I kind of think about it more as how does it kind of fit into how the business truly grows. So yeah, does that
And
answer the question?
that's actually a really interesting point of note, because when I first signed up for Bento, I think I did see it somewhere in the ether. I thought, oh, this looks interesting. I signed up. I had the 1 month trial and I did nothing. I didn't move over my mailing list. I just took no action. The trial expired and I kept going with MailChimp, my old provider. And then over the next month or so, MailChimp kept being a bit annoying, a bit convoluted. I didn't like their editing system. And I kept getting these emails from Bento, keeping it top of mind. And eventually that annoyance with MailChimp got big enough that I decided, okay, let me just cancel my MailChimp subscription and move over to Bento. So it's interesting how email did play a really crucial role there in keeping you top of
Yeah,
mind.
because I think you had an account very, very early on that you probably like tinkered with, right? So like if you think about that buying journey, that's so long, isn't it? And I think there's this, I think a lot of software owners, software is always talked about as like very, very slow, and it takes a really long time to build, and it takes a really long time to compound. And I think it's because of this type of stuff, right? People do take a really long time to convert. They've just got to be in that mood to buy it. It's like buying a car, right? Like you've just got to be in the market. You've got a new kid on the way, like something happened in your life, right? But these legacy brands understand this because they run, brand propaganda that's very, very broadly marketed, right? Like, all these large car companies do this. And I think performance marketers think these guys are dumb. Why aren't they running, lead funnel ads for their cars? And it's like, well, that's not really why someone buys a Land Rover, right? It's not, and like this stuff is also true in software, right? Like there's a reason people choose Bento over MailChimp, which you've done. Like there's a buying consideration there and all that. And frankly, that's like, there's so much branding. It's not, what ads I'm running and all that. That's obviously supportive, but there's a storytelling component. There is a brand component. There's the fact that we use cartoons and you may like those. There's people that sign up and they hate our cartoons and then they abuse us in the cancellation form, right? Like there's just all this stuff that contributes to whether someone converts or not. And I think a lot of SaaS marketers don't acknowledge the brand aspect of things. And yeah, I think brand needs to play out in everything. It needs to play out in your emails. It needs to play out in your marketing. It needs to play out in how your team conducts themselves online in forums and all that kind of stuff. And the aggregate result of your brand being told through all these different mediums results in higher signups and people converting and being retained, as long as your product's good.
And speaking of brand, your software is very, very good at personalization. What would you say if you were to build a new email setup from scratch? What would be the best in class way to do personalization as a new marketer on your platform?
Yeah, so I got maybe a little bit of a not a controversial opinion here, but maybe a bit. I think most people shouldn't really do too much personalization in terms of the journey stuff early on. You got to have a considerable list size to actually do a lot of that. So I think with most small brands, and I see this a lot when small brands hire agencies or freelancers, they tend to go pretty over the top with personalization on the customer journey. Like person signs up and is this type of category as customers. We're going to send them this type of personalized email series, all that kind of stuff. I think that's mostly overkill for most brands. Like for example, with Bento, being transparent, everyone gets the same welcome series. And the feedback we get is everyone loves the same welcome series, right? Because everyone's kind of doing the same job. They're all uploading leads or users or customers or subscribers. They're all sending broadcasts. They're all configuring one or two automations. So I don't need to split it too much. And I could have, a dedicated funnel for Shopify signups and all that. I just don't find it to be marginally more effective. Like there's other things that just help a lot more. And so I kind of advocate for getting the basics right, almost for any size of brand. So send more emails when people sign up. Make sure those emails are what users expect and want to read and will help them be successful with your product. Be consistent with your newsletters just to make sure people are up to date with what's going on, new features that are dropped that could be helpful for them and all that kind of stuff. And then once you've done the basics, try and look for like interesting ways to use email. So like, for example, when you did your import, we actually send like an email instantly telling you that the import is processing and just hold on tight and all that. The import probably processed in like a few minutes or whatever. So it's probably pretty fast, but still like that email you're getting from our team. So you're like, oh, cool. Like the Bento team, they're monitoring my imports when we're not really, but like if something goes wrong, then you can reply to that email, right? And now you've got a really great customer engagement mechanism there. When you run a bulk operation, when you're updating a lot of users, we send an email telling you to, they're like, oh, hold on, we're going to send you a backup, which we do. And we kind of walk you through a lot of that stuff, which is quite nice. And that helps with the branding side. So there's just like other ways you can use email that doesn't necessarily have to involve deep segmentation of your list and all that. And, most SaaS businesses don't have large lists. So trying to segment a list of 10,000 people or 5,000 people, you're just going to get such minor improvements on any results that it's not really worth it.
And at what point would you consider list segmentation, if any?
Large lists with businesses that are complex and have like pretty different buying journeys, where people can be led to different products based on who they are. But then arguably like people should be going through like almost personalized or different like opt-in forms and stuff like that anyway. So you don't really want to be building, like automation builders, you kind of don't want to be building like big snake trees where it's just like person does something, check something, come down this path, check something, come down this path. You don't want to be building stuff like that. You generally want to be building almost horizontally where it's like person does this, something happens. Person does this, something happens. Person does this, something happens. You want to keep things like quite compressed. So if I go into an account or I'm looking at an account in another system and then I see these like massive snake trees, which are possible in Bento, you can build that if you want. That just tends to be like a smell. And if I see that, I can generally recommend like a refactor and just simplifying a lot of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of how I recommend thinking about it, is just try and get the basics right. And if you find you're segmenting, like, could that just be generalized a little bit more? And if it's generalized, can it be clearer, simpler? And then from there, maybe you want to like duplicate it and then split test against it, which is fine. But then on the split testing note, which I think is also important, is I think a lot of marketers love split testing and they love like all that stuff. But if you go into Bento, we've actually got like the ability to work out if the changes you made actually had like a statistical difference. And I find that like a lot of A/B testing tools have a lot of like great statistics tools in there that do tell you if a headline is beneficial or not. But a lot of the time, if you've used those tools, they're actually dealing with like quite high volume and they're pretty good at telling you like, hey, something wasn't really beneficial. Like there was no change in performance or conversions. Whereas with email, a lot of the A/B tools kind of, they'll be like, oh, this headline's a lot better. But like the headline could be a lot better because they're using opens as the conversion metric, right? Or they're using clicks. And both of those could be impacted by, bots or servers opening them and checking them for malware. So you're like, all right, well, did headline A actually perform better, or did it just really go to a lot of Outlook or Hotmail users in that bundle of cohort? And it just so happened that those servers were checking links a lot more. Therefore, the performance metrics perform better on that subject, but it didn't actually drive more conversions or sales. So there's, I find a lot of A/B testing and stuff to be almost like not pointless, but just not done properly, and mostly used for marketers to spend client budgets doing busy work.
And that's the interesting thing about both A/B testing and also what you're saying earlier on these sort of snake trees. It can feel like, oh, I'm very productive. I made this very fancy, complicated flowchart, when actually what my customers really want is just a horizontal line with, you do this, okay, you get this email, do this, you get that email. That's amazing.
And with that snake tree, right, it's like you could do like a massive snake tree and like there could only be like 6 emails in it, right? But it looks really complex and the client's like, wow, this is sick. But I see that a lot in like e-commerce accounts and agencies, like when agencies have gone kind of in there. And the best accounts, it's honestly like a caveman approach. They're just writing a lot of emails. So they're just sending a lot of emails. They've got a lot of newsletters going, like they're just doing all the basics correct. And so, yeah, I kind of advocate for just doing like more of the same, getting the basics correct and just personalizing just a lot. Yeah, just not trying to like find someone to build like the most advanced thing because you probably don't need it. And the most profitable accounts in Bento, they're all like caveman accounts. They're just consistent. They're doing the same thing. They're really not doing anything complex. They just kind of know their customers and their business really well. And yeah, I could introduce them to an agency that could make things a little bit more complex for them, but maybe they wouldn't do it as much, you know? And that's true across like almost all markets. That's true across e-com, SaaS, info businesses, courses, all that kind of stuff. It's the people that are doing the basics right and consistently that outperform everyone that's doing intense personalization. And when I've seen agencies come in to do that intense personalization, sometimes the results are there, but often they're not.
And you touched briefly on the downfall of open rates. So there's so many reasons that you might have a higher open rate for the wrong reason. What would be the right metric or metrics for someone to be evaluating the success of their email campaign?
Sales revenue or some kind of North Star metric that's important to you. Could be signups, but then, what's the quality of those signups? Are you able to track the long tail conversion of those signups? They actually put in a credit card. So that could be one, like putting in a credit card is not the sign up, but tracking the credit card. So can you track how many, does your broadcast generate 10 credit card signups? So not just a sign up, but someone that has a sign up and a credit card. There's stuff like that I think is they're the metrics that I would be looking at. And for both opens and clicks, I kind of use them more as like a deliverability proxy. But yeah, like we've got accounts that do have low open rates, but they have low open rates because their emails are so long and they've got so many images in them. And the way that tracking pixels work is it's a little image at the bottom of the email. Images load top to bottom. Big images mean that the pixel has a lower chance of opening. So like, if they were just to send an email that just said test with plain text, they would have a ridiculous open rate. But because they send such long, image-heavy emails, the open rate looks like trash, right? But that's like a technical reason for the open rate. And so for them, like open rate's almost entirely pointless. So there's stuff like that.
That's actually another very tactical question for you. How do you think
Sure.
about image optimization in an email to not make the email too big, but also to have those nice images that look good?
Yeah, so you got to think, I said like email is expected and wanted for users, but then you've also got to think about, well, like Gmail is, they're often proxying a lot of these images and they're serving some of that content to their users and they want to serve less content, like less bandwidth to their users. And so I would just keep that in mind that Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail, and all that, you've got to be respectful to them. It's like another component of email marketing. You've got to be respectful to the ISPs. And so, yeah, that's all I would really be thinking about, is just like be respectful to them. So don't put in 20 megabit images in emails. Like it's pretty, most people are browsing on their phone anyway. And so, yeah, just kind of be respectful to inbox providers as well, right? If you send out 500,000 emails with 10 megabit images in them, it's like a lot of bandwidth. And sometimes those providers will just go like, no, we don't want to serve this. And they'll either put you in spam, they won't proxy images, they won't check the images, so your metric will look bad, all that kind of stuff.
And how would you solve for that? Like you would create a smaller image, you'd have fewer images. What would be the practical application?
Either compress images, resize them. Then again, we said the North Star is that emails are both expected and wanted. And sometimes having a good image in there helps people, right? So yeah, like having a logo in your email is obviously like a requirement kind of for a lot of people. So people have some brand recognition there. We say that all of our plain text emails that we send look like they're coming from us, even though they're automated and don't have any images really in there other than like a little profile photo at the bottom. So it depends. If users expect and want images, like in the case of ecom, then probably fine. Go for it. Just try and resize them. But yeah, don't just put like random mid-journey AI generated images in there, because I don't think they may not want or expect that, right? So even for like a blog post, having like a crazy like mid-journey image as the header may not actually be beneficial to like the blog post itself. So again, this is like a branding consideration, and these are just kind of like, yeah, you got to think about the user. Like, does the user, are they really going to resonate with that mid-journey AI crazy art that you've made, or do they actually really care about the technical blog post stuff, or the stuff that you've written that is like really insightful, and maybe you should highlight that more instead of putting an image that pushes all the content halfway down. Yeah, these are just considerations. But again, our North Star is that users want and expect emails from us. Yeah, every image and stuff, I would just consider if it's actually helping towards people wanting what you're sending.
I love that. I love that. And the simplicity of do users want it and do users expect it provides a really good guidance to all the downstream questions. How would you recommend marketers balance promotional aspects versus value add aspects in an email? So maybe going back to the belt example from earlier, we talked through some of the different things they could be sending. How much would you balance like something that's more practical to you, how to size your belt, how to take care of your belt, versus we have a belt on sale?
Yeah, I think like, again, it's like with the sign, yeah, when someone signs up, let's say on like the blog, or they sign up from like a Facebook ad or like an offer and all that kind of stuff, then potentially I'd be talking about like objections and, like the value of the product and all that. The leather belt's kind of like hard because people kind of understand the value of it. So a lot of it's going to be like brand storytelling, getting people to really resonate with that side of stuff. And so that's going to be the purpose of like a welcome series. In a newsletter, that's going to be going to people that have already been exposed to previously through that welcome series. So you could like get someone to go through a welcome series, not send them any newsletters, and then once they finish the welcome series, put them into the newsletter thing. And so from the newsletter, it's like, well, everyone's already got all your kind of brand propaganda. So they've already got, why you're amazing, how you're crafting them, all that kind of stuff. So they're already kind of like bought in. So then for them, it's like, okay, cool. They're probably waiting for a promo, or they're waiting for a discount, or they're waiting for a new color or a new release. Like, that's kind of what they're expecting at that point. They're probably not expecting, more you talking about the value of the company and all that. Unless maybe like, the company beard brand, they do like beard oil and all that kind of stuff. They do a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of video content. And so for them, they've always kind of got something to talk about that's kind of interesting, because they're either like how-to videos or they're, and then that's value and brand that they can then share outwards from there. And so, yeah, email can kind of make sure that content and that brand stuff is then shared to a much wider audience. And then people watch it and be like, yeah, okay, cool. I want to buy my leather belt. Like, I watched a great video on pairing a leather belt with a suit and a tie or whatever, and I'm going to go convert. So, yeah, that's kind of how I think about it. So maybe like get someone into like a welcome series, tell them about like the value of it and the brand story and all that kind of stuff. And then once they're out of that, then, the more promotional stuff on the newsletter, or more kind of broader branding stuff, YouTube videos, all that kind of stuff.
And let's say you have a marketer who has been very successful at email. They've built up a new email channel. They're seeing a lot of sales coming through. How would you think about scaling a successful email marketing effort?
Yeah, there's like a lot of conversations at the moment around scaling, and you see there's a lot of like creative networks and stuff like that you see. I'm pretty kind of skeptical on a lot of that stuff. I think if someone subscribes to Nate's list, I'm not sure that like a pop-up that shows 6 other newsletters someone's ever heard of, that they can press one button and subscribe to them all, is going to be beneficial. I think there's probably some negative downstream effects of that. I also think like, with a lot of those systems, you can also pay to grow the list. I'm pretty skeptical of that also being beneficial. You've also seen this like a lot in social media, right? Like there's a lot of people with very large accounts that they've purchased or they've paid to grow, and they have like less engagement than someone, someone with 100K could have less engagement than someone with 10K. And then if you look like the back end impact of that, like I don't have a large following on Twitter. It's under 10,000, which it's a bit of people. It's not compared to someone that has like 50,000 or 100,000 or kind of more influencery type people. But I would argue that like the amount of revenue that I've earned off the back of that account, even when I had 3K followers running the agency, the quality of people that were following me was very, very, very high. And I've earned a considerable amount of income off that list size, it being tight and a lot more focused. And I'm sure I could have paid to grow that, but I've just grown through other methods, and that's just led to just higher income earning for me. So I think you got to be really careful that like, okay, cool, I'm like paying this creator network to drive me a lot of leads, and maybe I'm getting like 5K to 10K leads a month, and I've got the capacity to pay for that and grow that. But is it really impacting what is important to grow the business, which is going to be sales and revenue, right? And payback periods and stuff. And the truth is, like, a lot of those newsletters, the way that they're earning money is off paid ads and sponsorships. And so that they're incentivized to grow their list size so they can charge more. And they're basically running an arbitrage, an arbitrage effectively. So they're paying 10K a month to grow their list. They're charging 20K a month. They're pocketing the 10K difference. And they just kind of keep compounding. But that's not going to last forever. And arguably a lot of brands are going to kind of like catch on to some of that. Yeah, kind of push back a bit. That's kind of, yeah, that's my take. I think there's plenty of ways to grow, right? Like if you're on the right YouTube channel and maybe 50 people sign up, what if those 50 people are like CTOs at all the companies, like at big companies, and then you're going to land big contracts that way, right? Or like this podcast that you're doing, it may not be seen, maybe it will, I don't know. But let's say it may not be seen by 500,000 people, but your network is super high value, and it may be seen by the right 10 or 20 people that have like a really big impact for your career or connect you and have great opportunities and all that kind of stuff. So I think of it a little bit more like that. So it's not the size of the list, it's who's on it and how you use it.
I so much agree with that focus on what is the North Star? What really matters? Is it revenue? Is it sales? And then how does this thing build into that versus the vanity metric of like, oh, I have more subscribers, but actually they're people who never want to buy my product anyway.
Yeah, or may not have even thought that they were even subscribing to the list, right? Like a lot of those creator tools, it's just like you press a button and you're now on 10 newsletters, right?
Yeah,
like,
true.
That can't sustain. And we get people that are like, oh, you don't have a creator network, and then so we're not going to sign up. And I'm cool with that. But when I have a look at those businesses, they seem very frail and fragile. Like they're either charging sponsorships or something like that. And if they had a product or a business, I think they would probably think a little bit more critical about audience building. Because yeah, like for me, it's like, okay, I could grow my email list with $3,000, or I could pay for a sponsorship on a YouTube channel that has a niche audience for 3,000 and actually like get in front of all the right people. And I'll take the latter almost every single time. And again, email after that, like from the email perspective, email can be fully supportive of those efforts and help keep people in, help keep people engaged, help bring them back, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, email is a growth channel. You just got to think a little bit critically about it, I think.
I love that. So would it be fair to say then that you would view email as more of a power up to every other channel you're doing versus a standalone channel on its own?
Depends on the business. For some of our customers, it is totally the largest driver of growth for them, and it makes them millions of dollars. So like for those businesses, email is an amazing growth channel, but they're like dialed in, right? Like they're dialed into their funnels, they're dialed into what moves the needle, they're dialed in companies. But email is a growth channel for every business. No, not at all, right? And often it's a supporting player in a much larger story. But most distribution is like that. Most distribution, it's kind of like that. Like I remember in the agency days, like working with just like larger clients, and I think I was really arrogant, and I thought that like they would say things like, oh, we're doing like pillar marketing, like we're just going to make sure all the pillars are on, AdWords is on, such and such is on, Facebook, like everything has to be on. And I was like, you guys are idiots. You just got to just do the one channel and really scale that. But they were kind of right. Like they maybe not spending their budgets efficiently, but by having everything on, they were kind of doing everything a little bit right, and like making sure that they were always front of mind with their customers. They were everywhere they needed to be. I'd be like, why are you spending like so much money on a conference? Well, because like 2 or 3 enterprise contracts could come from that, and did previously come from that, or one massive company that now is like 40% of their revenue would come from that. And I, as a young marketer, never acknowledged the power in that, and I think now I do. Now I totally get it, and yeah, I think that's just young marketers have to, I don't know, figure that out eventually. That a lot of this old school branding stuff or old school marketing like does play out, and things need to be a little bit more holistic. They've got to cover everything.
That's actually really interesting. And I think the balancing of brand versus performance is maybe one of the pieces that's standing out to me from what you said here, that you should do brand, even though it's not necessarily going to drive a measurable ROI immediately. Fair. One last thing that I want to dive into is AI, because I think in Bento, you have one of the best implementations of AI that I've seen, actually. There are all these people that talk about AI, use AI in various ways. But you have this thing when you send an email that says, who do you want to send it to? And then you can filter your list to the people that you want to send to. And it uses AI to do that, where, for instance, I was searching my list the other day. I wanted to see who are the like maybe interesting people on my list. And so I typed in, can I have a list of people who have custom domains? And it took that like custom domains prompt and turned it into a search that said, it's not Gmail, it's not Facebook, it's not Gmail, it's not Yahoo, it's not Hotmail, all the different standard email addresses. I loved how I was able to translate my natural language search of emails into a really clear filter. How did you approach adding AI to Bento in this very integrated way?
Yeah. So going from like my own experience, like I use Cursor, which is basically like a VS Code fork. And one of the reasons I like Cursor is it just like subtly improves all the things I was already doing, right? Like a lot of the commands and everything that I'm doing in that AI app, it's just enhancing what I could already do by myself. So whether that's the autocomplete, whether that, completing my next thought of a few lines of code, whether that's refactoring something or whatever, like it's very like built into the app and very easy to utilize and get utility out of. And so with Bento, I've kind of like held out adding AI to the product, mostly trying to work out, all right, well, like where can it like help people just move through stuff faster? So in all automation tools and all email marketing tools, that kind of like segment builder is very complex it's just complex. That like there's the default account has 100 filters, right, that they can pick from. And then you add custom fields on that, tags on that, like products. It's pretty gnarly. And then we combine like you could have all groups or and groups, and it's just too much. So being able to simplify that into a text field where someone can type in customers and no other context, and then Bento will go, all right, well, they've got a tag called customer. I think that's probably what they mean. Let's just do that. Or in your case, you're like, find me people that aren't on free providers. And then it goes, all right, well, a free provider, it could probably be better. It probably could have included T Online or some other obscure ones, but it does like a best effort, right? Like for you, I think I'd excluded Hotmail, Yahoo, and Gmail, which is probably 90% of the free providers on your list. But you realizing, I had to build 3 different groups and all that. There's so much like knowledge that needs to be trained there, and that could have been a Discord support ticket or an email or a tweet, and so AI replaced that for that. And so that's one way we've used it. Last week or the week before, I added like a new into our automation builder, a new AI function, and so now you can basically say, someone does something, and then you can write an AI function that is based on the data of the user. So you could say, hey, like, I don't even know. In your case, you could say like, add a new custom field if the user is a free provider based on their email. And the AI will just automatically enrich that profile, right? And the next version we want to do is actually go out on Google search or I don't know, whatever API I end up using, and do research. So I could say, all right, like Nate signed up, go do some search on that user, or search on the domain, and then enrich all these custom fields based on the data that you found about the user. So that's the next one. We're doing that because like we want people to like, they're either using a third party for that or that it's just kind of cool as well, right? So
that is.
So you should probably like enrich your list. So that could be a way that you enrich your list. It's like the AI goes out, does some research, and then comes back and says, hey, like this is a company, or no, this isn't a company. This is like, we can't find anything on this person. And then you can either use that data in your emails or use that for your own like lead type stuff. Yeah. But that's also something that I wanted. right? So like, and even with the segmenting AI stuff, like I would go into accounts and people would be like, I'm struggling with this segment. And I was like, oh, it'd be great if I could just type it in. Like, I don't know every account and I don't know all the custom fields they have, and being able to just the prompt also helped me. So if I want something, it'll get shipped. And I think that's helpful. Like in the email writing, if you're using like the plain text email, you can type in like / prompt and just write me a SAS Dunning email that's friendly, and it will just pump that out. And then you can configure it and change it a little bit, and then it's kind of like done. The 3 Dunning emails I wrote were just written by AI. I just want to pump them out really fast, and I edited them like slightly, but that was something that I wanted. Yeah, like I don't want to write all my boring transactional emails. I'd rather an AI write some of those and then add some personality on top. Translating emails into different languages was something people asked, and we can also do that. Yeah, so anytime I want something or a user wants something and it kind of makes sense, and it's like they're getting utility out of it and I know it's having an impact, I'll ship it. But I find a lot of AI stuff is kind of like just pixie dust and it may not be useful. Again, like using the image example, I have a customer who he wrote in a tweet last night that he had a dream that Bento AI would make images in the editor for him. And I'm like, I'm not going to ship that because like I don't think users necessarily like want AI generated images. That's more my kind of personal take. But then in addition, it's like there's so much complex UI around like versioning of an image, trying to get the right image and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's like maybe out of scope for a product like Bento. So I'm also kind of like considering that kind of stuff. So just because someone wants it, I don't want it, so it may not get shipped. So
Which is
I
the
also think a little
beauty
bit like that.
of being your own best customer. You know what this thing needs, and you can build for the power user, which is yourself.
Yeah. And I appreciate him putting out the suggestion, but yeah, he's a great customer. But nah, Matt, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to ship it.
Well, that brings us to the conclusion of the interview. Thank you for coming on the show. Where
No
can
worries.
people go to find out more about you and about Bento?
Yeah, Bento is available at bentonow.com, BENTONOW. And yeah, you can also book a demo with me if you want to talk to me personally. And yeah, my Twitter is Jesse T. Hanley, Hanley. And I'm there, and you can follow along if you want or not.
Fantastic. Well, that will be in the show notes below. Thank you for coming on, Jesse. What a delight.
All right. Thanks, man. Cheers.